The Zorvan Empire had never misjudged a species before. Their conquests spanned over 70 star systems, and their military campaigns were known for their ruthless efficiency and surgical precision. So when the Galactic High Command turned its attention to a small isolated blue planet on the edge of Sector 19, designated Terra by the locals and Earth by most databanks, they were confident this would be another swift victory. The campaign was deemed so low risk that the invasion was assigned to mid-tier strategists looking to prove themselves. The Zorvan War Council convened in orbit around Dromus Prime. Holographic projections of Earth's cities, military installations, and known technologies flickered in the chamber's cold blue light. General Vorak, the lead analyst, stood tall in ceremonial armor, his spiny, ridged crest gleaming with confidence. Humanity lacks centralized planetary defense, Vorak announced to the gathered strategists. No unified planetary government, no off-world colonies of significance, technological development crude, nuclear weapons obsolete, space presence laughably limited. A murmur of approval passed through the chamber. We estimate planetary surrender within 6 Earth hours of fleet deployment, Vorak continued, tapping a floating holomap. They may launch some symbolic resistance, but their fragmented nations will not withstand orbital bombardment or shock troop incursions. The psychological pressure alone will collapse them. The strategists nodded, confident in the numbers. Their simulations, fed with centuries of conquest data, produced near-identical results across every scenario. The humans simply didn't have the infrastructure, coordination, or capability to resist a modern interstellar invasion. The Zorvan Empire's intelligence branch had combed through intercepted Earth transmissions, satellite scans, and deep sensor surveillance. They noted Earth's wars, its chaos, its tribal divisions disguised as nations. To them, humans were primitive, brutally violent, yes, but undisciplined and divided, dangerous only to themselves. What they missed was context. They saw only the surface. They didn't know how Earth's chaos bred resilience, how fragmented nations had still come together before when the stakes were high. How wars on Earth, though messy, had driven innovation like no other species in known space. They mistook unpredictability for weakness, and in doing so, they failed to ask one critical question. What if humanity wanted to be underestimated? But none of these doubts were raised in the Zorvan War Council. Instead, the fleet mobilized with ceremonial fanfare. 28 cruisers, 5 dreadnoughts, and a planetary siege platform known as the Oryx's Fist entered warp space bound for Sol. Their objective? Full planetary occupation and the elimination of any human resistance. As the fleet approached Earth, they broadcast a formal ultimatum in over 200 Earth languages simultaneously. Surrender within 6 Earth hours, or face obliteration. The message was sent with arrogant flourish, assuming the psychological blow alone would drive panic and capitulation. But humanity didn't panic. The response was nothing. No counter-transmission. No global address from Earth's leaders. No overt military activity. The alien strategists took this as confirmation that Earth was frozen in fear. They saw it as evidence of disarray, misinterpreting the quiet as helplessness. But in reality, the humans weren't frozen. They were preparing. General Vorak, watching from the command deck of the Zorvan flagship Vengeance of Stars, smirked as Earth's continents remained eerily calm. Typical primitives, he muttered. The moment they saw us, they broke. In that moment, the Zorvan Empire sealed its own fate, not by firing a weapon, but by trusting flawed assumptions and discounting a truth no algorithm could quantify. Humans had stopped talking because they had started planning, and when humanity plans under pressure, empires fall. Following the Zorvan Empire's formal ultimatum, surrender within 6 hours or face annihilation, the alien fleet expected the usual reactions: panic, scrambled diplomatic messages, pleas for mercy, or last-minute posturing. But what they received was nothing. Earth didn't respond. No messages, no mass evacuations, no signs of planetary defense activation. The entire world, it seemed, had gone dark. General Vorak, standing aboard the Vengeance of Stars, stared at the real-time scans of Earth's surface with a scowl. Zorvanian probes reported that human cities were operational, energy grids were stable, and atmospheric conditions unchanged. But the communications networks, previously a chaotic jumble of satellite signals, digital noise, and streaming entertainment, had gone almost completely offline. "This is not panic," Vorak muttered to his second-in-command. "This is intentional." Still, most of the fleet's analysts concluded the humans had cut their own communications in a last-ditch attempt to hide or retreat. "They've likely collapsed into infighting," one strategist speculated. "Primitive nations will blame each other and be too paralyzed to coordinate a defense." Emboldened, the Zorvan fleet moved to Phase 2, atmospheric descent and territory lockdown. Troop carriers, assault dropships, and surveillance drones plunged into Earth's upper atmosphere. Their mission? Establish control of population centers and prepare for full-scale occupation. But what they found on the ground was not what they expected. Major cities like New York, Tokyo, Moscow, and Johannesburg, formerly teeming with life, were strangely empty. Not destroyed, not abandoned. Empty. Like someone had pressed pause on civilization. Highways clear, power still flowing. But the people were gone. There were no military battalions greeting them, no fighter jets in the sky, no explosions, no anti-aircraft fire. Only the wind and the haunting emptiness of human silence. Alien soldiers moved cautiously through empty streets, buildings still warm from recent occupation. Meals half-eaten, vehicles left running. It was as if millions had simply vanished in minutes. In space, Vorak grew increasingly agitated. Where is their resistance? Where is there anything? Behind him, a junior officer, barely old enough to have fought in the Cyrax campaign, spoke hesitantly. "Sir, there are strange electromagnetic readings originating from the moon and the oceans, deep levels. Our scans can't penetrate." Vorak waved it off. "Earth's oceans are irrelevant, and their moon holds no strategic." The words died in his throat as new readings emerged. In low orbit, several alien drones blinked out of existence. No explosions, no energy weapons, just gone. Like something erased them from space. A proximity alert followed. Something had emerged from the dark side of the moon. Multiple somethings, sleek, silent, moving fast. They weren't marked on any database. "Unknown objects," the officer whispered. "They're human. Impossible." Earth had no ships capable of stealth, let alone orbital maneuvering. Even more bizarre, the Zorvan Empire's quantum communication relays, interconnected across the fleet, began to experience distortion, faint feedback loops, ghost signals. Someone was jamming quantum entanglement itself. That wasn't supposed to be possible. Back on Earth, more anomalies appeared. Deep under the Mariana Trench, seismic activity registered far beyond normal tectonic movement. Not earthquakes, launches. From the ice shelves of Antarctica, heat blooms appeared, rising fast. Hidden silos buried centuries ago opened like flower petals beneath the snow. Earth hadn't panicked. It had prepared. Humanity had gone dark not because it was scared, but because it was activating systems no alien surveillance had ever detected. Systems built in secret. Designed not to match alien tech, but to leapfrog it. The 6-hour countdown ticked on. But now, every minute that passed felt heavier to the aliens. The invaders, once arrogant, began to realize the silence wasn't the absence of resistance. It was the sound of a predator waiting. At 17 minutes past the initial deployment, humanity struck. Not with a global military broadcast or a last-ditch charge from desperate soldiers, but with silence-shattering precision. It began in orbit. The Zorvan dreadnought Oryx's Fist, a floating fortress bristling with planet-cracker weapons, experienced a total systems blackout. 1 second, its reactors hummed with 100 gigatons of directed power. The next, it was dead in space. Its shields collapsed. Its lights flickered. And before the crew could even issue a distress call, it exploded in complete silence. The aliens didn't even detect a weapon. On the Vengeance of Stars, General Vorak stood frozen. His command bridge lit up with frantic data streams. Fleet communications were collapsing. Capital ships were vanishing from scanners, and a virus, one unlike anything the Empire had seen, was corrupting the fleet's AI systems, not disabling them, rewriting them. It had infiltrated through an innocuous comm ping received earlier from Earth, a burst transmission disguised as a weather beacon. Hidden inside was a quantum-encoded algorithm that bypassed Zorvan firewalls in microseconds. It spread like wildfire, turning precision targeting computers into junk and scrambling friend or foe identifiers. Entire squadrons began firing on their own vessels. In Earth's upper atmosphere, alien dropships suddenly lost control of their thrusters and navigation. Their onboard AIs went silent, overridden. One by one, they dropped out of formation and crashed into empty fields, oceans, and mountainsides, neutralized without a single human soldier firing a shot. Then came the railguns. From hidden installations buried beneath the Rockies, the Andes, and the Gobi Desert, hypervelocity projectiles, made from exotic matter the aliens had never seen, launched at speeds approaching 12 kilometers per second. Alien capital ships, still scrambling to reorient, were torn apart mid-maneuver. There was no warning, no muzzle flash, just sudden, cataclysmic impact. From the dark side of the moon, a new class of human stealth craft emerged, the Spectre class. These weren't traditional ships. They had no heat signature, no mass-based trajectory readings, and moved using gravitic pulse bursts, technology even the Zorvan Empire hadn't achieved. They slipped past alien defensive arrays and began cutting through the fleet like ghosts, with plasma scythes. In the oceans, sleeper submarines, each the size of a small city, rose from their deep trench sanctuaries. Powered by dark fusion cores and carrying payloads designed not to destroy planets but to cripple invading empires, they launched targeted pulses toward alien communication buoys and quantum relays, frying entire networks without damaging infrastructure. Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was surgically dismantling the invasion. Across every alien command channel, panic surged. We underestimated their tech. They're using weapons we can't even see. What is this countermeasure? How? Do they have gravitic manipulation? Inside the Zorvan War Council's emergency chamber on Dromus Prime, a dozen strategists watched in real time as the invasion fleet's status lights flickered from green to yellow to red to gone. Humanity had flipped the entire paradigm on its head. While the Zorvan Empire had built visible might, huge ships, towering machines, raw force Earth had built invisibly. It had planned for the day someone might come. It had invested not in scale but in disruption, and in understanding how their enemies thought. They knew someone would come expecting chaos, disunity, weakness. The humans had played into the stereotype, letting outdated transmissions and obvious war histories shape their enemies' expectations. Meanwhile, the real defenses waited, underground, in orbit, and buried in code. Back aboard the Vengeance of Stars, General Vorak watched the screen as one by one, his fleet's lights vanished. 17 minutes in, the war was over. He just didn't know it yet. At minute 23, the Zorvan fleet began to retreat. It was no longer a matter of strategy. It was instinct. A species that had never known defeat was now being unmade with surgical precision by a planet they had labeled primitive. Ships tried to reorient toward the edges of Earth's orbit, initiating emergency warp jumps, but even their escape vectors were compromised. Human gravitic mines, previously undetectable, detonated in their exit corridors, collapsing warp windows and trapping entire vessels in high-energy turbulence. The retreating ships weren't simply fleeing, they were fleeing blind, cut off from their command AIs, isolated from central communication, and pursued by human stealth craft that left no trail. The Spectre-class interceptors did not chase with flashy dogfights or long engagements. They appeared, disabled, or destroyed a ship's core with pinpoint disruption pulses, and vanished again, never lingering, never missing. On Earth, the skies remained mostly quiet. There was no grand military parade, no nuclear apocalypse. Instead, hidden defense platforms continued working methodically, disabling threats and sealing orbital breaches. Humanity's strategy wasn't to win a war in the traditional sense. It was to deny the enemy the ability to wage war at all. Inside the vengeance of stars, General Vorak stood alone. His bridge crew were either incapacitated or too terrified to issue commands. Reports showed that 87% of the invasion fleet had been lost or rendered inoperable. Surface operations had failed completely. Not a single human combatant had been captured. Not a single city had been taken. Then came the message. It didn't arrive through standard comms. It appeared simultaneously on every surviving Zorvan ship's central display. The image was a simple live feed, a human command center, clean and utilitarian, filled with calm individuals in military uniforms. At the center stood a middle-aged woman with steel-gray eyes, a simple Earth flag on her shoulder. She was sipping coffee. "We intercepted your invasion protocols," she said casually. "Very efficient. Impressive simulations. You predicted 6 hours to surrender. Logical, based on what we allowed you to see." She gestured, and behind her a wall of screens displayed live feeds from the Human Response Network. Deep ocean command bunkers, moon-based factories, stealth ship launch, bays. You saw chaos, disunity, outdated tech. That's what we let you see. Because that's what you expected to see, and that expectation was your vulnerability. She paused to take another sip, then continued. Humanity's strength has never been in brute force. It's in adaptation, creativity, surprise. We don't win by overpowering. We win by outthinking. Her face turned cold. This was not our full arsenal. Not even close. It was a demonstration. So go home. Crawl back to your empire. And tell them what happened here. Tell them Earth is not to be touched. The feed cut. Back on Dromus Prime, the Zorvan High Command received the report minutes later. The invasion fleet was functionally destroyed. The remaining ships, crippled and silent, drifted into the void. Public panic erupted across Zorvan-controlled worlds. A race that had conquered dozens of systems in centuries now faced a single truth. They had been outmatched, not in firepower, but in understanding. Earth, long ignored, now loomed large across every tactical projection. Overnight, humanity went from insignificant upstarts to strategic threats. The war was over, but the consequences had just begun. In the final report filed to the Galactic Council, a single line stood out, written by a shaken but honest Zorvan analyst. We gave them hours before surrender. They gave us minutes before extinction. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.